Feel the energy in the room. Love it. It's great. All right, if I could have your attention, I'd like to introduce our next session for this morning. As Elliot said, my name is Zachary Misko. I'm happy to be here and happy to now be with Shared Expertise. So look forward to working with many of you in my new capacity. We're here to talk with several Chief Human Resource Officers this morning in what is a panel format. So let me set the stage and then I'll introduce you to our panel. High-performing companies tend to have several things in common. They groom top leaders from within, remove barriers to innovation, and successfully define their value proposition to customers and employees. As talent, knowledge, and leadership become the currency of competitive advantage for many of these companies, the Chief Human Resource Officer's, or CHRO, role is more critical than ever to their success. Companies rely on their CHROs to not only understand the needs of the business, but to also expertly use HR tools and techniques and drive performance by effectively and consistently analyzing and integrating the two. This isn't an easy task, and many would-be CHROs find the path to the top or the transition once they are there fraught with obstacles. The esteemed group of HR leaders we have on our panel today seem to have overcome those obstacles and are great representatives of HR excellence and leadership. Over the next 45 minutes, I'll ask these HR leaders questions that will help us all better understand the methods behind their success. They will talk about their journey, the obstacles, and best practices in impacting business through goals, innovation, metrics, and evolution, and growth in human resources. So let's meet our panel. Their full bios are in the programs for your reference and also online. But I had the opportunity to get to know the men and women behind the bios. So I thought I'd do things a little differently and versus read 6 bios to you this morning. Thought I'd shake things up and tell you what I learned about the people sitting on stage in front of you. Joe Cabral. Joe is the Senior Vice President and Chief Human Resources Officer at North Shore LIJ Health System. Joe was born on an island, literally. It's called Santa Maria and is in the middle of the Atlantic. While beginning his professional career in the Army, Joe realized that assessing the weights and balances of aircrafts left him wanting for more. And taking the advice from a former boss, it's not what you do, but how you do it, Joe realized he could do HR well and entered the world of human resources. Joe enjoys vacationing in Cape Cod and rooting on his favorite team, the New England Patriots. One of Joe's favorite books, Execution, discusses the discipline of getting things done. Joe and the employees at North Shore LIJ Health System know how to get things done, delivering 27,000 babies each year. This is the equivalent to the number of births annually in Vermont, Rhode Island, and Delaware combined. Wow. Welcome, Joe. Carol Dalton Slover, SPHR, and Senior Vice President, Human Resources, Unitech Global Services. Carol started as a temp HR assistant working at Atlantic Financial when she was 18 and knew she had already found the perfect career. A Connecticut native, Carol prefers to be by the beach and in the sun. She enjoys spending time on either coast in San Diego or Clearwater, and when internationally traveling, Hong Kong is one of her favorites. Carol's sons keep her busy with baseball and lacrosse, and when she's not watching them, you may catch her watching and cheering for the Phillies. Unitech Global Services is working on several high-profile and exciting projects right now, including the DAS system in the World Trade Center. Welcome, Carol. Michael Pilnick, the Executive Vice President of Human Resources for First Advantage Corporation. Michael started his career in education, although realized being an educator was a great segue into HR, and the rest is history. Born in Brooklyn, New York, of course, Michael is a New York Yankees fan. And although in the off-season you may find him saltwater fly fishing or drinking cold margaritas in the Islamorada, Florida Keys. Being a master certified scuba diver, Michael also enjoyed traveling to Kona, Hawaii to participate in the nighttime manta ray dive. His worldly mindset and passion transcends into his career as well, as First Advantage conducted searches in 176 countries and offers screening capabilities in 235 countries. Welcome, Michael. Jen Mann, Vice President, Human Resources, SAS. Knowing early on that HR was the career for her, Jen focused on organizational development at North Carolina State University and Meredith College. Born in Durham, North Carolina, Jen and family steal away to their beach home in North Myrtle Beach whenever possible. Cheering on Duke with her daughter is always a good time for Jen when she isn't working on her golf game. With over half of their revenue and employees based outside of the US, Jen has the opportunity to manage a global workforce at SAS, one of the 100 best companies to work for. Recently, author Jason Dorsey engaged executives at SAS to ensure that not only they understand a global workforce, but how to manage a diverse and dynamic team of people. Welcome, Jen. And Mindy Geiser, Chief People Officer, Colliers International. Mindy's initial focus in college was international relations, communications, and French, and she imagined having a career in PR and promotions to be in her future. Although after her persistence in an interview that she wasn't entirely sure she was even qualified for at the time, Mindy entered the world of HR, and she hasn't looked back since. Born in the beautiful but flat land of Sioux City, Iowa, Mindy also enjoys the mountain terrain and skiing, especially when she has a time for a trip to Whistler, British Columbia. She enjoys spending time with her family, 4 children, Mindy has triplets, by the way, cheering on the Seattle Seahawks and doing just about anything outdoors. It's not surprising that one of her favorite books is Give and Take, as several Colliers International C-suite executives actually started their own non-for-profit, spreading the act of giving across the world. Welcome, Mindy, and welcome to everyone on our panel.
Hey, Zach. I'm John Morabito. I'm with Cigna, and I'm a Phillies fan.
Are you kidding me? John, I can't believe I did that. I was saving the best for last. You ruined my surprise. And more about John. John knew HR was the right place for him from the beginning, and then although he began his career focused in labor relations, his career has evolved throughout the years to encompass all of HR. And John was born in Chicago, Illinois, and in his spare time you may find him trap shooting or riding his motorcycle. Although born a Midwesterner, John roots for the Phillies and also enjoys sports and history books when he has time. Most of us know and recognize Cigna for selling insurance. However, you may be surprised to learn that Cigna actually makes most of its money in non-insurance products. Thank you for being here, John. All right, now let's get started. Let's talk a little bit about HR impact in your organization. And almost 80% of the CHROs interviewed or surveyed by Cornell University in their annual survey of the Fortune 150 CHROs chose 3 roles as having the greatest impact on the business: strategic advisor, confidant or coach, and talent architect. Talk to me about what role has the greatest impact in your business and why. John?
Yeah, good morning, everybody. I'll start. I think it's an interesting question because it kind of depends on the situation that you happen to be in at your company, what your relationship is with your CEO, what's necessary at the time, and so forth. At Cigna, we're growing pretty rapidly. 4 years ago, we were about a $18 billion company. This year will be about $34 billion. So the growth has really been significant over the last 4 years. So when you're in a growth mode, at least from our standpoint, it's really clear that the talent architect becomes, kind of the biggest single thing that we're focused on. I think the confidant, the strategic advisor, I think those are important, but at the end of the day, it's about people, it's about having the right talent in the organization and being able to attract and grow talent around the world that's going to be able to keep up with the growth of the organization. We've had a fair bit of inorganic growth, but just as much organic. So, being able to keep up with what we need, particularly in some critical areas like marketing, data analytics, technology, as our technology organization is getting older and we need new skills in that particular part of the company. Talent really becomes kind of the critical thing that will allow us to continue to grow. So from my standpoint, at least at Cigna, talent architect is really the key to success.
Great, thank you, John. Mindy?
with that. I think that when I thought about this question, I think that my role, we're a large, global, really decentralized, kind of diversified organization around the world, and my role has really been to build programs and tools that create a pathway to a more integrated global platform. That's what we were trying to accomplish, becoming more collaborative globally. And I think that building those tools and creating the pathway and the talent architect piece, those tools, then having some success and creating some momentum in those things has enabled us to then create the role of strategic advisor and confidant and coach to the leadership and the top of the organization. I don't think you start there. I think you start by sort of creating wins and successes and generating some positive momentum in the organization, and then I think those things follow.
I really believe it's almost a trick question for those HR practitioners in the room. Why? Because I think you need all three, right? It's almost whether it's the chicken or the egg. So I really truly believe that you can't be a strategic advisor if you haven't built the trust and the confidence of your CEO and or your colleagues within the C-suite. So I really believe when we were looking at this and when I was looking at the question and trying to understand how it applied to my world today, where we have a little over 50,000 employees working for us, and healthcare is changing. It's evolving. We're in an incredible industry. It's as it was mentioned last night, it's more about not just treating patients when they're sick, but keeping people healthy. And so that's an evolution. That's an evolution for our docs, for our nurses, for everyone who provides care and service. And so how do you go about doing that? And also our expansion into the insurance world. We're an $8 billion healthcare system, lots of different small cultures because we've grown through acquisition. And I really believe that it's no surprise that the CEOs had picked these three top items to be sort of what they're focused on or would like HR to be focused on. And so I think it depends on what's going on, as John said, in your world today, which one is more important at the time, right? So if we're growing talent, then really being that talent architect is going to be critical, especially in a growth mode. But I think you can't do one without the other. So I really believe it's a little bit of a trick question. But thanks for that trick question.
Michael?
Yeah, I think it's synergistic with culture, and trust rings a bell for me. It's critical for our employees. It's critical for our clients. We can't deliver unless we do what we say we're going to do and deliver on it. And then, quite frankly, our investors need the trust as well. So all three, there's a column of trust that runs throughout our business culture, and we've got to be able to drive that in every country we operate in. So, I would say that it's talent architecture and everything else. And it's a bit of juggling because as soon as you turn your head away from trust or talent, there's always something else. So, yeah.
Yeah, I would agree with that. The one thing that I thought in terms of the question is I did agree that I felt like it was a bit of a trick question to choose between the three. But the one thing that I thought rings true in my organization is the CEO needs a confidant. And that's a lot of where his ideas start. And if HR doesn't serve that role, somebody else will. And I think the other two can kind of follow. But if, as an HR person, you really serve that role as the confidant and the person that the ideas start with, you can kind of direct them or have more influence than letting someone else serve that role. Because to me, I think the CEO either defers to the CFO, the head of HR, or maybe a chief operating officer for that role. And if you can serve that role, it gives your entire HR organization more influence over what happens next, so to speak. So I thought, originally a trick question, it was tough to decide, but I definitely would say from an HR perspective that confident is an important role.
Okay. John?
Yeah, I just have to jump in, even though I spoke already on the same question. This whole kind of concept of CHRO as confidant and coach of the CEO, I think it's important. I think the CHRO should be one, but I don't think we ought to have the exclusive right to confidant and coach of the CEO. I think the CEO is going to have oftentimes multiple people that he or she ought to be able to count on. In our case, sometimes it's a CFO, sometimes it's a general counsel, sometimes it's one of the key business leaders. oftentimes it's me. But I think within HR, my opinion at least, is we get really caught up in this whole idea of we need to be the only one that's the confidant and coach of the CEO. I think there's some insecurity in there, frankly, within HR. And I think we're a function a little bit of some insecurity sometimes. So from my standpoint, I feel like a more effective model is where the CEO and the whole team trust one another and can all kind of work together and oftentimes be kind of confidant and coach of each other, my point of view.
Great.
That's a good point.
Thank you. So I know many of you had the opportunity to join us at the gala last night. And in the beginning of the program, we recognized excellent in human resource outsourcing. And we had the opportunity to award the Program of the Year and the Talent Acquisition Program of the Year. So let's talk a little bit about outsourcing right now. And HR leaders are tasked with creating a culture of collaboration, driving and sustaining accountability and communication with their organization. How are these impacted and managed when a company outsources, from your experience? I'd like to take that one. Go ahead.
Yeah, I think that it can be quite liberating if it's done properly, quite frankly. As you start to outsource Tier 0, Tier 1, Tier 2 activities, you really have to raise the bar on your frontline HR business partners so that they ought to be adding the kind of value that they ought to be to begin with. So it's coaching, it's performance management, it's succession planning. It's truly the value-added activities rather than the transactional activities. And I've been in the HR space for a long time, and I've seen that transition. But you really, the reality is that unless you are able to solve for those transactional issues efficiently, you can't create the space or the time for your key HR leaders to truly be key HR leaders. So in some cases, there's resistance to that because there's comfort in doing the transactional activities. And in some cases, you really will liberate the best of the best on your team, and you'll see who rises for the occasion. So I think that if you use it right, with the right strategy behind it, it can be quite liberating. But it can also be a threat at the same time, so it's a challenge.
Other comments on outsourcing?
I would agree 100% with that. I think also the balance of being able to make the difficult decision of making the decision for the greater good. And my situation is a good example where we have about 4,000 employees, but an extremely diverse workforce. And we made the decision to outsource some of our benefits work, very transactional. And it was a difficult decision because it always means that there's a change internally. But in doing so, we went from having kind of 1.5 people who could help our employee workforce with benefits questions to an entire team, 24 hours, 7 days a week. And you have to make the decision that is best for your entire organization. So while it meant some discomfort internally within the HR organization, it meant a couple changes that were difficult decisions. As we made the transition, the rest of the employees really benefited in having the ability to have someone talk to them, talk to their spouse, really help them with benefits. And we were able to access a level of expertise that we could never hire internally. Where if we were a much bigger organization, we might have the resources internally to keep some of that stuff, but that was the decision process we went through, and managing the transition is difficult, but then managing and making sure the people that you've selected as an outsourced partner really are a partner and not just a vendor. Right. And that has been key to it, that the provider that we selected really knows our business and makes it a point to kind of be a partner with us instead of, thanks for the business and, give us a report once a year. So.
And that was one of the things I liked that I heard from many of you as we were talking about this question, that you didn't use that vendor word. It was about, when we outsource, it's about being a partner. It's about how do we utilize that partner as an extension of our team to get the job done. So I think good things to that. Mindy.
So, we were talking about this concept of outsourcing last night at dinner. I think you and I were sitting next to each other and talking about what does it mean when you say outsourcing? And for me, I don't know, I've been in the HR world for 24 plus years, something like that. And when I first started and we would talk about the word outsourcing, it meant offshoring. And that was a bad thing. It meant you were getting rid of a bunch of employees and you were offshoring all of the work. And actually today, outsourcing means something very different. I think it's a natural evolution of the growth and the pace of change that's happening in the organization, the globalization, so much happening, so much consolidation. For us to keep up, the natural sort of evolution of building the right ecosystem to support the organization and its growth is to find the partners that have the specialization where we might not internally, that can be sort of an extension of our team. But the way that we see it, we definitely use the word partnership, and we have some fantastic partners with Colliers International today. People like Aon Hewitt, who I know has a presence here, and we have a big partnership. We work with Harvard, we have Taleo, we have a number of outstanding partners that we don't have the expertise internally, but they become an extension of our team. So I think the key thing is that for us to keep in mind as we continue this pace, I think it will continue. I think as I look for what's coming next, I think there will be more outsourcing, not less. And I think the key is to understand that they are an extension of our team. So whatever happens with those outsourced partners, whatever experience our employees and or customers around the world have, it's an extension of our team. We need to treat them with as much care and as consideration as we do our own team, and consider them to be members of our own team in the way that we interact, in the way that they represent us with our customer and our client.
Thank you, Mindy. John?
Yeah, I was just going to only add, as I heard the comments from Carol and Michael, some of the words that were used were, I think Michael said liberating as one, and I do think when outsourcing is done well and within your overall HR strategy, and it becomes kind of part of your people strategy, I think outsourcing can be really a wonderful thing, and actually quite liberating is a great word. I think on the other hand, it can be really challenging. And it can be really tough and bring you into a situation that is, kind of takes you backward a little bit in your overall people strategy. And unfortunately, I've had both situations depending on the partner that's used. So Carol was talking about kind of making sure you have a partner and not a vendor and so forth. I mean, I would only say anybody who's getting into or getting ready to change perhaps partners should be really conscious of the choice that they're about to make, and to be to kind of take that process of making your choice to the nth degree of diligence to make sure that you've got the right partner in place who's going to be able to do what they say they're going to do, because I've seen a couple of situations where they like any good salespeople, they're going to say more than what they're actually capable of, and then it becomes a real problem for the HR organization and for the company overall.
So I just want to add, Mandy, to your point around having a good partner. I'm going to just sort of a shout out to Skill Survey, and we work with many, but we actually had a business challenge, and we certainly didn't have the in-house expertise. And I think it was probably about 2 years ago that we started to throw the concept out and trying to automate a particular actual process that we had, which would probably eliminate, let's say, 12 FTEs, all by automating this process. And also reduce the cycle time from anywhere from 4 to 6 months to 4 to 6 weeks, which for us, and this is around credentialing physicians and nurse practitioners and other allied health professionals as an example. And when you have a good partner, clearly they weren't going to do this just for us. I know they're out in the audience maybe. But they went out and said, is there a market for this? Can we do this and still meet our expectations, Montreal IJ, and also maybe use it and sell it to other customers? And sure enough, we're sort of rolling it out as we speak, and so far so good. So when done right and having the right partnership, they came out, we were using one of their products, and then we realized that, hey, why don't we modify this a little bit, talk to them, and hopefully they'll be as successful as I think they will be, because there's no one in this space today. So that's when a real partnership works, and all of our internal customers, as well as any physicians or nurse practitioners that we hire, are going to be that much more satisfied from an onboarding perspective. So that's just an example of when a real partnership works. And we've had several others, but I just sort of, that's more recent.
I just want to piggyback on that. I think that the outsourced relationship has matured over the last 5, 10, 15, 20 years. And it was all about efficiencies, cycle time and cost per transaction. And the world is sort of competitive in that space, but where the real competition occurs is not just the efficiencies, but it's the effectiveness. Right. And I think that in looking at those relationships from my seat, when you start to enter into those relationships, pretty much costs and cycle time are about the same now amongst all the competitors. It's really about being effective in that relationship and understanding your client's needs and understanding the business and the marketplace that you're in. And John, you're right. If you can't keep that promise, it's gone. But it is about those, or the ability to reckon with it and deal with the issue and resolve it. But I think that at the end of the day, these relationships, what glues them together is not just cost and efficiencies, it's the effectiveness of the relationship, and it's the trust, it's the partnership, the ability to resolve issues, solve problems together. And you know, that's the next generation of these relationships.
Okay, great. We didn't even prompt you to put it into a mathematical equation like we have, but I like that. Very good. Thank you.
Zach, is it okay if I had just one more?
You want to add on, Carol? Go
I
ahead.
just had one more comment on the outsourcing, because I think as an HR organization, we not only get involved in outsourcing conversations and decisions around our own functions, we also get involved in the outsourcing of other functions within the company. And I think being able to take all of the things that we've discussed here in terms of HR outsourcing and support the IT organization or the finance organization, any other of our departments that are doing the same type of thing, and make sure they're doing their due diligence and handling the process as well as possibly can be, because I do think HR is kind of pulled into, you know, if IT is going to outsource something, obviously that impacts people, and kind of, you know, supporting them in that aspect. So that's really it.
Great. Okay, thank you, Carol. Let's move along. So we just, for those of you that were here just prior, Michelle and Elliot set the stage, and I think my impression was MGM Resorts family understands engagement. There are some good examples that Michelle shared with us of how they do that within MGM. Let's talk a little bit about engagement at the companies that you work for. And you know, employees are no longer looking for a career, they're looking for an experience. And how do you ensure that experience is rewarding, exciting, and empowering at your company? Jen, you want to start?
That one. I do hope you get back to the question that's focused on analytics, because I think that's an important one. I don't know if you're going in order, but that one is definitely an important one, certainly to us as a business analytics company. If I think about SaaS, we've been in business analytics for 38 years. We were pioneers in that space, and pioneers in workplace cultures as well. And some of the things that I think have been core to our culture from day one, which are still very, very prevalent and have gotten us the recognition for being a great place to work and an engaging culture and environment for our employees, is one, empowering and meaningful work. I mean, if you think about what we do with software development, what we produce comes out of the minds of our employees. These are knowledge workers, and that's the most important thing to them. So understanding the context of what they do, being engaged with the customer as much as possible, is really, really important. Over the past 5 to 10 years, we've spent a lot of our investment in people and hiring domain expertise across the industries that we support. So fraud experts for banking, risk experts for health and life sciences, chief medical officers. And these are really, really bright people. And so they want really cool things to work on. They're problem solvers. So that's really, really important. We spend a lot of energy helping our employees understand what our customers are doing with our software, through all of our internal communications, and getting them very, very involved with customers. The second is they're really bright, so they don't want to be told what to do. They don't want to be micromanaged. I say that. They do want to be micromanaged on their careers. They do want career champions. They want someone who cares about their career, and so that's something we have to really help our leaders understand the importance of that. But in terms of day-to-day activity, they want to be given resources and freedom and go. And we really do a great job of that. So meaningful work and empowering management philosophy. And then the third is to have a world-class work environment wherever we have people. So while our headquarters in Cary, North Carolina gets a lot of recognition because we have a lot of infrastructure there, on-site daycares and a healthcare center, staffed with MDs and family nurse practitioners, and a lot of other crazy benefits like salons and hair salons and spa type facilities. We get recognition all around the world. because we want our work environment to be pleasant for all of our employees and a place that our customers want to come to, where we can connect those interactions. So those are, I think, 3 things that we do really well at SAS to engage our employees.
Thank you. Anyone else want to talk?
Yeah, I
Wanna
could
talk
definitely
about that,
comment
Carol?
on engagement. The one area that I think is either sometimes overlooked a bit or it's being scaled back because of cost is having employees travel with each other, to see customers. You know, a lot of companies are doing things virtually because it's cheaper, faster, easier. But I find that there's nothing more engaging than having people travel to other sites in your organization or to conferences like this where you send a couple employees together, because you kind of get an understanding of what people are dealing with from a geography standpoint. You can't help but learn something personal about somebody when you travel with them. And I think when you give employees experiences that they wouldn't get otherwise, you really give them something that they can have with them for the rest of their life. And it's, to me, that is something that I think people just overlook, that it's a nice thing to do for employees. And then the other thing I think is important, to give employees what they want, not what you want for them, and understanding your workforce. We spend a lot of time talking about understanding your industry, but even within an industry, every single workforce is very different, and I've had a lot of learning experience in the current industry that I'm in because it's very different. Telecommunications, I've got everything from RF engineers to technicians to tower climbers. It's a bunch of different populations, and kind of getting into what works for one group might not work for another. So making sure you really understand the workforce and being able to give them what they actually want in terms of engagement and retention.
Sure, and I appreciate, social media. I think we all agree on the impact social media has had in just being able to work virtually. And we talk about not just our workforce in Philadelphia, we talk about our workforce truly is global because of some of the new technology and tools available, but the power of a handshake and being able to sit across from the table from someone and learn is we sometimes forget about the importance and the value and the meaning that has to some employees. So I'm glad you mentioned that. Mindy?
So I agree with both of those. I think creating engaging work, creating an empowering environment, and creating unique experiences, what we call it at Colliers, we call it service excellence. And we pride ourselves on delivering service excellence to all those with whom we do business, is what we say. So it's our internal workforce as well as our external. And the idea of service excellence is not just customer service, but creating a memorable experience, to go above and beyond to create a memorable experience for the person that we're dealing with. So, and that's about being unique and customized. So it's about really understanding your client or really understanding your employee, and then creating those memorable and unique experiences that make people want to come back, that make people want to work for us, that make people want to do business with us. So we're really heavily focused on that customization. And so that creates great stories around the world of things that we've done for employees that are out of the box and different and special because of what they were looking for at that time, or where they were in their life, or what was happening, be it having a baby or getting married or some special occasion, and how we can really celebrate that in a unique way. The other thought I had that hasn't yet been mentioned, there's so many ways, I guess, that we create engaging environments, but we invest really heavily in professional development. And we have our own in-house university. We offer over 600 plus courses through the university. We're constantly adding new things, and it is a huge value add for us, a huge competitive advantage. Employees want to feel like they have a place they can continue to grow and develop. And so we invest more per employee than anyone else in our industry. It's pretty unique in the commercial real estate industry to do that. And as a result, we get a lot of engagement and a lot of retention as a result of it. We attract a lot of talent, and I think we can't ever underestimate the investment and continued growth and development for our employees.
Great, thank you. All right, let's move right on and talk a little bit about goals and how some of these things impact and help us to reach our goals. And from specifically in that survey we mentioned earlier, CHROs have indicated that in the past 5 years, the following areas have changed in their organizations. 90% agree there's a need for HR to use data and analytics. 85% agree there's a demand for HR's input into business decisions, and 79% agree there's a need for HR to collaborate with non-HR functions. How do your 2014 objectives compare your company?
So actually,
Sure.
I'll start. I'm a true believer, if you can't measure it, you can't manage it. We truly, if you can't measure your success, or you can't measure, if you don't know what your workforce looks like, and as for even when we were talking about engagement, we actually know that, for just an example, 25% of our workforce are millennials, but we're hiring almost 47% of all our new hires. We hire about 7,000 people a year, are millennials. So our workforce is changing. What motivates them? How do we keep them engaged? All that is important. The idea that we've really had some incredible success within our organization and really focusing on business outcomes, right? So it's really about how do we make sure that we're connected to the goals of the company. And we've spent an awful lot of time tying our performance reviews, for example, to our monthly balance scorecards. So when the employees are reviewed, there's no surprise, right? So every month we tell them how they're doing with quality, patient experience, financial performance. So the annual review comes, and we can debate whether or not those are even valuable, the annual reviews, but for right now, just humor me. We actually have done an incredible job that no one's surprised. So every month, every employee, whether you're a housekeeper that doesn't necessarily, or the laundry worker who never sees the light of day, they understand that what they do impacts the overall customer experience. And those are real things, real examples that we use every day in how we start to focus on aligning our workforce with the goals of the organization. We've been incredibly successful. We have some incredible numbers. We've gone out and we were featured recently in a book called Closing the Engagement Gap as an organization, one of the only healthcare providers to be mentioned. And I think the key to success and the secret sauce is everything we've talked about. It's focusing on engaging your workforce, right? So if you truly believe, or you're a CEO, that your workforce is your competitive advantage, then how do we make that a reality? And that's what we've been struggling with. So my CEO believes it, invests in it, and so you would think it'd make my job a lot easier, but in reality, his expectation is here, and we as an organization, HR organization, every time we think we're close to meeting his expectation, he raises the bar. So it's a great place to be, it's a great organization, but I really believe that without the data, without the metrics, and linking it to your business results, I think then you sort of, it's a feel-good kind of approach.
Sure. Jen?
Yeah, I was just going to comment. I'm assuming that many of our goals are much the same. If you look at any of the predictions, 2014 in HR, they all line up with what we've probably got on our agendas. But certainly leveraging workforce analytics is a number one priority for us. You would think, being in business analytics, we would be far ahead of many organizations, but I say we're the cobbler's children with no shoes. No shortage of data scientists running around, but giving it the attention, the deliberate focus that it's needed. So getting out of, and to be clear on what we mean by analytics, I'm not talking about dashboard data. I'm not talking about telling your CEO how many people you have in the organization. I'm not talking about reporting what happened, who left, and why. It's predicting. It's optimizing and trying to predict those things before they happen. And so getting HR kind of out of the notion that you've got to look beyond the systems that maybe you are most familiar with. Look across your whole entire enterprise. Looking at systems that finance is using, your sales team is using to look at correlations so that you can anticipate who's going to be a successful profile and identify who's likely to leave and put preventative measures in place before those things happen. Is really, really important. So we've taken a pretty gutsy approach and did some made some organizational changes so that we can build some of that technical capability in HR that we maybe had not had. Certainly have it in other parts of the organization so that we can put some of those models in place.
Great. Thank you, Jen. John?
Yeah, I mean, I would probably be a little repetitive to what my colleagues here have said. I do think that the analytics are critical. I mean, if you look at the things you mentioned in the question, Zach, about data and analytics and collaboration and collaboration with other functions, I mean, I think those are all tools necessary to to drive what we're trying to do. Again, kind of going back to where we started from a talent standpoint and growing the talent within the organization, having the right people in place. I mean, my objectives haven't really changed much, over the last several years. They've been all about basically, talent of the organization, making sure we have enough, making sure we have the right succession in place, making sure we have the right level of kind of high performance within the organization, and to Jen's point, being able to kind of predict what we're going to need, where we're going to need it, and build for the future. And I think the tools we have in place, we're just trying to get better at in order to, really meet the needs. And Jen, if you know how to predict those things, you have a new customer. So,
Speaking of analytics and utilizing data, let's just shift quickly to metrics and try to simplify it and saying, they're too often tactical and fraught with incapabilities among far too many measures. And I think you said it's not just about what do we have or what did we have, how do we use them to be more predictive, Jen, as you said. So HR measures do need to be clearly linked to a few critical measures and closely aligned to the business strategy. If you could measure or report only one HR data point that may help you be more predictive or for whatnot, what would it be and why?
This was a hard question because there's so many data points. But when I look at our HR organization, I'm looking at how we impact the customer, the external customer first and foremost. At the end of the day, that's the most important component to our equation is the customer. If we get, obviously it's an indicator of getting the people component right. In order for us to develop good software, that's an indication if people are buying that software. Renewing our software is a good indication that we're continuing to listen to them, invest in research and development, and doing the right thing. We've got the right skills to do that. Being able to keep those customers for the long term means we have a sustainable workforce that's meeting their technical support needs. So the customer component is the biggest piece to me. Obviously, measures on how our community looks at us, whether we are a respected employer is huge, what our analysts are saying about us and how we influence that, and having a strong employment brand, quite frankly, being able to engage with customers and influence the sales cycle. How much revenue can we link to what we contributed to is what we look at SAS.
Thank you. John?
Like Jen said, I think this is a really hard question to pick, one metric. And as I thought about it in advance a little bit, that this almost sounds kind of cliche because it's a thing that we've been looking at in HR for, it's the one metric we've been looking at forever. But, we would still believe that, I don't know the exact percentages, but let's say 60% of our productivity comes out of 30%, our top 30% employees. So, if you believe that your highest performing employees are the ones that are driving most of the success in the organization, then your ability to keep the high performing employees, whether they be in service or customer facing roles or technology or marketing or other parts of the organization, we would say that, our top kind of quartile performers in the organization are the most critical to our success in the long term. Therefore, the metric that I, kind of go to first and foremost is, what's our turnover rate within that cohort of employees, those that are high performing year after year, are the ones that we most want to make sure that we keep and that we reward in the right way.
Sure, that's good, and I think that as we were talking, and several of us had the conversation, it is maybe this a trick question, as you said earlier, Joe, because it isn't really just about one right metric. It's about having the right metrics and ensuring that the data points are accurate, that you're measuring, so that you can utilize those for some of the things like workforce planning and some of those predictive analysis that we talked about there and so important. Michael?
Yeah, I think that everything starts with EBITDA, and then you work your way backwards. So you have to look at your metrics within HR, and given whatever business model you operate within, you have to determine where you most contribute to EBITDA at the end of the day. And it's not just what resonates with your CFO, but it really is your true direct line to contribution at the end of the day. Right. So it may be turnover in some environments. Right. For us, it would be promotion rates, customer retention, so on and so forth. So the closer we are from an HR point of view to our clients out in the field, the people who actually drive revenue, who write us checks, the better off we are at the end of the day.
And it's the same within healthcare, right? So no margin, no mission. So if we can't do exactly that, we're not going to be able to deliver services. So I echo what you just
I
said.
don't know if there's any right answer, but if you roll it up,
Right.
it's the same financial indices that everyone else is using.
Mindy, bring us home with your comment quickly on metric.
We've talked a lot about this as a senior team, and as a business, the one metric we look at is NPS, Net Promoter Score. I don't know for others who use that, but we're big believers in that, and we believe that the Net Promoter Score is essentially, will you recommend us? Will you use us again? And so from a specific HR standpoint, we use engagement the same way. We look really heavily, and we talk specifically this year about using the single metric of employee engagement, because the employee engagement measures what will they do, what will they say, will they stay, will they recommend us to others? And so we feel like in all of that, we think reflects on the way they'll behave, whether they'll help us drive EBITDA, whether they'll reflect positively to our clients and our customers. So we've chosen engagement from an HR perspective, but we still heavily weigh on NPS as a company.
Great. Thank you, Mindy, Jen, John, Michael, Carol, and Joe for your answers and your time in talking to us and sharing some of the best practices and some of the things that you've learned. I've gotten a commitment from our 6 panelists that they will attend our networking break, which is starting now. We've got a 15-minute networking break in Salon 3. That networking break is sponsored by the HR Today Services and Technology Association. So if you do have questions, you would like to say hello, and introduce yourself to one of our panelists, please find them at the networking section of our program that begins now. And thank you to each of you for your time in answering our questions and educating us today.